everything was great. Everything was perfect. Everything was wonderful. So, you know, take online support posts with a grain of salt too. I mean, a healthy dose of, you know, just understand sometimes people will post more negative than positive, sadly. But in my case, I have scars, but I'm proud of them. I really am. And they don't look that bad. You know, it's not like I'm 20 years old anymore. I'm not running around in a tiny bikini. So it's something that I think is a courageous thing to do. At least I felt in my mind. It was a courageous decision for myself and for my family. And I really don't find the scarring to be that bad. It's amazing what surgeons can do these days. They do wonderful work, and how blessed we are, you know, to have been women with these choices. I had a very good friend she was a couple of decades my senior. I met her many years ago, and she told me every woman in her family had breast cancer or had been diagnosed or died from breast cancer. And when she was young, she went in search of a plastic surgeon who would remove her breasts. And no one at that time would do surgery on healthy breast tissue. And sure enough, you know, 10 years down the road, she was diagnosed as well with invasive breast cancer. And she survived. She went into remission twice, but sadly, breast cancer did take her life. And I remember, you know, she was just so beautiful. And she would say things to me like, listen, the only difference between you and me is that I have a really good idea of what's probably going to kill me. She was right. But I do remember her saying to me, I wish I had the choices that women do now. She did not have the benefit of having, you know, genetic testing. And back then, no surgeons would remove healthy breast tissue. And she is no longer with us. And I hear her voice in my head. You know, when I was struggling with my decision, I could just hear her saying, I wish I had the options women do now. And sometimes people come into your life for a reason, and maybe I just needed to hear that. You know, I hope she knows somewhere up there that I heard her.
Right decision. Yeah.
Yeah. She's a lovely woman.
I was going to say that you were blessed as well with having met this woman. Yes. Let me take you to your blog, sharingwithmybreasties.com. It's wonderful and beautiful and full of optimism, and your amazing pictures. And I mean, you look gorgeous there. And why wouldn't you? And tell us more.
Well, it's funny. I have always enjoyed writing. I was a reporter for decades of my life. And something in me just thought, I need to share more information about LCIS. There's just not enough out there. This is such a unique and rare sort of diagnosis. And I just sort of had this idea that I should share it, but it's also very scary for me. It's uncomfortable every time I sit down to write another, you know, post. It gets way too long, and then I fret over how much do I share and how much do I not share. You know, it's funny. I feel like most of my life I've been a pretty open book, but when you start to write about very intimate things like your breasts and your diagnosis and your family, it's a little scary, to be honest. And sharing this with you is probably a very public thing for me to do. And I recently did an interview with a magazine in Fort Smith, Arkansas, called Due South Magazine. And they wrote an article that actually came out today. And so I guess I am forcing myself to share more and more. I will eventually have to put this on my Facebook page and share with everyone your story and your podcast, because
if you want
I
to.
have found, what I have found in my journey is that there are so many incredible women out there in the world that are really willing to help and share and give you details. And it's such a great resource to reach out, because a lot of women are a little afraid to do so. but it's really easy. You know, you don't even have to drive to a support group meeting. You just log in and you'll find all these women who've been through what you're going through. And that's one thing, just to hear their stories. But what's incredible is when you start messaging them and you become friends, and I had people send me drain pouches before my surgery and pillows. And, you know, these are people I've never met in person, but who I really have sort of this kinship with now, that I would like to do my part to share. And if it can help just one person, that's great. And you know what, if it only helps me, that's great too.
Mm.
It's not that I'm doing it for any kind of gain. It might just be that maybe one person has my similar situation and I could help her, and I would love to.
Hmm. That's exactly why I started Mind Bloom as well.
That's wonderful. I love your podcast.
Thank you. It's your podcast too.
It's everybody's, isn't
It's
it?
everybody's.
When you put it out there, it's sort of like birthing a baby of sorts, isn't it?
Hmm. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to put it out there. And I try as much as possible to stay candid and be candid about what the things I go through, and sometimes not related to breast cancer necessarily, just
Yeah.
things of life and growth. Um, but boy, is it hard.
It is. It
But
is. And I didn't think that I would be such a fearful person about sharing, but it is. It's a little,
no.
you know, anytime you put a piece of you out into the world, there's a little fear that someone will reject it. But in truth, I think I think the more you do, the more people react positively to you. And so don't stop sharing your story, and don't stop. I mean, it's a gift to be able to help
Mm.
others, you know, and something that I think of other friends who have blogs for various reasons, and I admire them more so now. Yeah,
It's hard, yes. And it
courageous.
was exactly with that idea in mind as well, the idea of helping. If I had that exact sentence in my head, if it's only one person that I can help, my job will have been done. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I remember I felt that that had been accomplished, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. When I started receiving direct messages on Instagram from people who had gone through biopsies and were in pain or soreness, didn't know exactly what was going on with their body. They were scared of the results of that biopsy. And interestingly enough, no one had told them there would be bruising and there would be soreness. And so,
I remember my very first mammogram when I turned
yeah,
40.
right.
Um, I After I got the results of the mammogram, they called me back and wanted to do a stereotactic breast biopsy for a
Oh,
suspicious area, and it scared me to death.
yeah.
I literally the next day um, checked my will to make sure that everything was
Mm,
up to date because I was so afraid. And it turns out women who have fibrous breast tissue, this is a common occurrence. It turned out to be nothing. I did have the breast biopsy, but you know, women who have, I guess fibrous breasts are a good thing in some ways because they're nice and firm breasts, but they're
mm-hmm.
hard to look at in a mammogram.
Very much.
And you know, these things happen a lot with women, and it really, it is scary. I don't know how you take away the fear though. Just knowing that other women like us are out there who've been through a lot of these hassles and a lot of these frights and fears are willing to help. I think that may be a boost.
That helps, yeah. Having someone to hold our hands, I guess. And we and
Especially
yeah,
this breast cancer community.
yeah,
You know, you and I guess, are what they call previvors.
exactly.
um, Along this whole breast cancer spectrum, we are people who were at an increased risk. Um, but there are thrivers and there are survivors. And, you know, every single one of them along the entire spectrum that I've ever really talked with has been supportive of your situation and where you're going and the decisions that you're making. Um, like I said earlier, sometimes I feel almost guilty, you know, that I got a warning signal.
No.
A lot of women don't, but the women that I've talked with, they don't. begrudge you your warning signal. You know, they're so loving and supportive and understanding. And this is a fantastic group of women out here in the world who are trying to make a difference and help other women. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, in this journey of Mind Bloom, I've had women with metastatic breast cancer
Mm-hmm.
support me imagine.
Yes.
And
Isn't that
saying,
wonderful?
isn't it, yes,
Yes.
and eye-opening, and just so shows you how beautiful the world is, really, and how many amazing people are out there. You're so
It's
focused on the
unbelievable, isn't it, how many of
yeah.
us are affected by breast cancer?
Hmm.
And it's just we need to find an answer. We need to find a cure.
It's
This
one
this
in eight women.
pardon?
1 in 8 women
Yeah, it's
worldwide. It's a lot.
it's it's a lot.
Mm-mm. All right. Donna, would you have any tips for the people at home who, like us, had this diagnosis of LCIS, or just have huge scanxiety? Now I can use the word. um, and I was one of those. I still am, but I was one of those suffering tremendously with just the word mammogram and ultrasound. That would just
Yeah.
make me flip out. So, do you have any advice for people going through these things on the spectrum of breast cancer?
I don't know that I'm a great person to give advice. I will just say, um, do your research, be an advocate for your own health. You know, recognize that you don't have to do the first thing that someone tells you to do. I think there are women who are afraid to ask too many questions, and maybe they're afraid to go seek a second opinion or a third opinion. But this is your body and your health, and you only get one.
Yeah.
So be an advocate for yourself and stand up for yourself and research, ask questions, seek out support. As I was going through that year-long decision time period about whether I would have a mastectomy, I sought out a lot of support from my family, from my friends. I I just wasn't sure if I was making the right decision. I struggled, and if it weren't for, you know, women like yourself and others who offer up help and support, I just don't think I would have uh, been able to manage the stress and the anxiety. So my advice would just be to find out, get every question answered, keep a list, you know, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. And only when you're comfortable, make the decisions that you need to make. And whatever decisions they are, I think I support women who make any decision,
Yeah.
whether it be to do nothing or whether it be to do the most aggressive treatment there is. You really have to just support each other and understand that each woman is doing the thing that is best for her and her family.
Yeah.
And
That's
there's
just.
support out there. Know that there is support out
Mm-hmm.
there. A lot of women on the blogs, for example, I feel so bad because they'll write in their stories and they have no one. You know, some of the women don't have family or friends, or they're going through a divorce, or their husband is leaving them because they've had cancer treatment. It's heartbreaking. And just don't allow yourself to be so alone, because there are lots of women out here in this blogosphere world and this podcast world and this social world that will help you and offer you advice and um, you know, even send you a drain holder. It's just a beautiful thing.
Exactly. Thank you, Donna, so much. I appreciate you so much. I'm so blessed to have met you on the Facebook group, a support group. Who'd have thought?
I
We're
know.
right.
Now it's so nice to see your face on my Zoom camera here. You look so beautiful and glowing, and I appreciate what you're doing with your Mind Bloom.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. Have a
It was so
great
nice to meet you.
one. You